Similarly comedic on the other side of Chicago, the Chicago Cubs have apparently made a clerical error that could be very costly in the future. It was revealed late last week by the Chicago Tribune that the Cubs actually went over the CBT, the competitive balance tax of $237 million. They did that to the tune of only 83 wins, falling far short of the playoffs. So they spent right up to the cap, the de facto salary cap, the Ricketts de facto salary cap. Uh, didn't even make the playoffs. They went over by a mere $300,000, which big deal. They went over the tax limit, so they're going to get charged 20% over that. The calculation came out to either $55,000 or $60,000 in tax. Big deal. That's like a rounding error for a business that size that has such a massive budget. The problem is the way the CBT is written is when you go over 1 year, that counts towards going over a second year where the tax goes up exponentially. It actually goes up for the first $20 million you're over in year two. Instead of being 20%, it goes to 30%. But the $20 million over that in the year two is taxed at 42%. Then the next $20 million over that is taxed at 75 to 90%. So you're almost starting to pay $2 on the dollar as you escalate from there. And that while seems fanciful, as we've seen Ricketts over and over again and Jed Hoyer reference the random number that MLB has come up with, this 237 million, I think it goes up to 242 million next year. But it's just a number that the owners can choose to go right past if they decide to, or adhere to directly. It's just money. Eventually, when you get to year three, it starts involving draft picks and stuff. But for now, we'll just talk about the money side of it, because there's either, again, this $55,000 is not a big deal. But if you extrapolate this, if the Cubs if they had been planning to potentially go after Juan Soto in this offseason and just blow through the tax threshold, well, now that they're in year two, they're paying exponentially more money to do that. Where if they had simply stayed just a little bit below this threshold, they wouldn't have that same issue. So they're potentially paying $2 for every dollar they'd be spending over that, just because they had this clerical error. And there's some mystery of whether it's an error or if they knew about it. I've got a couple theories. There's two theories essentially that I want to talk about. The one is they just made a fucking mistake, and this is just stupid, but they didn't really care because it's only $55,000, which is embarrassing, but whatever. The theory two is far more cynical, and I'll put the tinfoil hat on, as we referenced earlier. A little conspiratorial, but is this a ploy by Jed Hoyer, but really by Tom Ricketts, to justify not spending this offseason, not going way over the tax as we potentially might want them to? As an obvious solution to a lot of their problems would be to go after Juan Soto and potentially paying him 50 to 60 million a year. Is this little error kind of building in an excuse why the Cubs will not be doing this? And I do believe that's just a conspiracy theory. It's just a cynical fun thing to throw out there by podcasters, jackasses like me. But there is some credence to it, because Tom Ricketts has already talked about this to the Tribune specifically. It's almost like he's putting this idea out there that they can't spend now because of this clerical error. It just seemed very convenient that the news came out there and he's already speaking about it. Like, you don't really hear from your owners, but he was interviewed by the Tribune in the same article. It's like, this is kind of like a PR release we fucked up and now we can't spend. Not that they were going to, or that there was any like breadcrumbs leading to think that Ricketts would actually go over that threshold, but it just it's a built-in excuse, and they created it on their own, and now they're putting it out there in the media for everyone to see as soon as they possibly could. So I don't know. It just makes me raise an eyebrow. And I've been so annoyed with basically every time you hear Ricketts speak since 2020. Uh, just these things with always surrounding the money, and this just seems a little too perfect to me that they happen to make this clerical error that's going to kind of justify that they're going to lean on this whole offseason on why they might not be able to do what they might want to do.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree,
there
man.
is, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I feel like all signs point to like we're already doing the big Cubs marketing machine on why now we're going to be financially strapped next year to not sign any big free agents. But we do believe with Craig Console and this nucleus of players we have, we can get to where we need to be with
Hmm.
some mid-level additions.
It
Fuck
feels like
off.
we're gonna get told the exact same story we have the last two off seasons,
Yeah.
like just as you spelled out. So I just feel the same narrative is going to be coming from the Cubs why they can't do what they need to do. There is, I believe, close to $60 million coming off the books this year, potentially with Cody Bellinger and others coming off. But of course, they want to re-sign Bellinger if they
Why?
can. Um, he's been productive enough. It would be uh, above market value, most likely, above what he's really worth. But I think he wants to be here or be in Chicago. So I don't know. I think we'll get deeper into what the Cubs offseason plans are. But I wanted to throw out that little bit of news there, and in my own little conspiracy theory. I think you picked up on the exact same things I did. So not surprising to us or anyone that listens to this podcast, I think.
No, not at all.
Word Hole Media.